Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So, just 10 minutes ago, we finished talking about Ender's Game. Although for you it's been a week. For me it has been 10 minutes. Now, so here it is. Speaker for the Dead. This is Orson Scott Card's Author's Definitive Edition, right here. And, by the way, so if you've watched the review of Ender's Game, you haven't read Ender's Game, if you're gonna read Ender's Game, just skip this review, go read Ender's Game, and then just read this book. That I'll summarize the review right now. You read this book, there. Because we're gonna talk about what this book spoils. It's a sequel. It spoils the previous book. That's what sequels do. So, Orson Scott Card was very forward on saying that he actually had intended this book first, and that he intended it as a standalone book. So it's a little weird that it ends up as the sequel to a book that was started after it, but here's the thing about it. Speaker for the Dead is not Ender's Game. Not at all. It's almost like it's written by a different person. Ender's Game is about children and responsibility and their emotions and their feelings, and the military and kind of war. Well, Speaker for the Dead takes place like hundreds of years later, but through relativistic time travel, Ender is still alive. He's 30 or something. like 200 years later, he's 30 years old. So, Ender, I think they call him Ender the Xenocide in history, has long since disappeared, and people don't know what happened to him, but they just assume that he's dead. And he's actually become a founder of a religion where you tell the complete stories of people when they've died. And so he's become a speaker for the dead. And he's been doing this, jumping from planet to planet, speak for people, for hundreds of years. And, so, Speaker for the Dead. In the aftermath of his terrible war, Ender Wiggin disappeared, and a powerful voice arose, the Speaker for the Dead, who told the true story of the Bugger War. Now, long years later, a second alien race has been discovered, but again the aliens' ways are strange and frightening. Again, humans die. And it is only the Speaker for the Dead, who is also Ender Wiggin the Xenocide, who has the courage to confront the mystery and the truth. Now, here's the thing. Orson Scott Card attempts, Speaker for the Dead is an attempt to construct this kind of imagined, religion and spirituality, and it's magnificent. It's magnificent. And the idea of the story is that there is a sanctuary where sentient living creatures called piggies. They look like little warthogs or whatever. Live in this area, and humans have settled. They only live in one city. It's walled off because they don't want to spoil the piggies with technology, and only exobiologists, exobiologists, I don't know, can go in to study the piggies. And then one of them gets murdered by them, and nobody knows why. It's this huge secret. And then Ender ends up being called here to speak the death of somebody else, and ends up getting kind of stuck in this entire mystery about why are the piggies murdering people, or why do the piggies murder this person. What is it about them that makes this thing possible? And it is brilliant. It's brilliant. But the thing about it is, where Ender's Game is a pure description of kind of like a child's psychology under very trying circumstances, Speaker for the Dead is a very mature, well-researched look at a balanced man at pieces kind of expression of his life journey. the Andrew Wiggin that shows up in Speaker for the Dead is a completely different person. A person who has been turned by hardship into something almost mystical. And he's an overman man in a different way in this novel, where he's like, he can't lose a war game in the first book. Like in this book, he cannot lose a philosophy, essentially. Like a philosophical game. How about that? Did my power seriously just go out? Alright. So, to go back to where I was before the lights went out, he's become a man who philosophically is so grounded that he's powerful mentally and spiritually, as opposed to physically. So it's not an issue of whether or not Andrew Wiggin is going to win a fight. The real issue is how he's going to shine kind of the light of truth upon things. And it's a weird thing to wrap your head around, but when I read this conversation, you're going to be like, oh, that's a different book. So here we go. The Sefero smiled at the speaker's rejection of his common title, Don Cristo. He knew how manipulative it was to require other people to call the Philos by their titles and made-up names. As St. Angelo said, when they call you by your title, they admit you are a Christian. When they call you by your name, a sermon comes from their own lips. He took Ender by the shoulders and said, yes, I am Sefero, and what are you to us, our infestation of weeds? I try to be a blight wherever I go. Beware then, or the Lord of the harvest will burn you with the tares. I know, damnation is only a breath away, and there's no hope of getting me to repent. The priests do repentance. Our job is teaching the mind. It was good of you to come. It was good of you to invite me here. I had been reduced to the crudest sort of bludgeoning in order to get anyone to converse with me at all. The Sefero understood, of course. The speaker knew the invitation had come only because of his inquisitorial threat. But Brother Aimé preferred to keep the discussion cheerful. Come now, is it true you knew San Angelo? Are you the very one who spoke his death? Ender gestured towards the tall weeds peering over the top of the courtyard wall. He would have approved the disarray of your garden. He loved provoking Cardinal Aquila. And no doubt your Bishop Peregrino also curls his nose in disgust at your shoddy groundskeeping. Don Cristo winked. You know too many of our secrets. If we help you find answers to your questions, will you go away? There's hope! The longest I've stayed anywhere since I began serving as a speaker was the year and a half I lived in Reykjavik. Reykjavik's the capital of Iceland, VerticalSandwich. You know this. On Trondheim. Oh, no, it's not. It's just named after that. It's on a planet called Trondheim. I wish you'd promise us a similar brevity here. I ask, not for myself, but for the peace of mind of those who wear much heavier robes than mine. Ender gave the only sincere answer that might help set the bishop's mind at ease. I promise that if I ever find a place to settle down, I'll shed my title of speaker and become a productive citizen. In a place like this, that would include conversion to Catholicism. St. Angelo made me promise years ago that if I ever got religion, it would be his. Somehow that does not sound like a sincere protestation of faith. That's because I haven't any. The Sefero laughed, as if he knew better, and insisted on showing Ender around the monastery and the schools before getting to Ender's questions. Ender didn't mind. He wanted to see how far St. Angelo's ideas had come in the century since his death. The schools seemed pleasant enough, and the quality of education was high, but it was dark before the Sefero led him back to the monastery and into the small cell that he and his wife, the Oradora, shared. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the Spanish in this, but like I don't speak Spanish at all. Not even un poquito. Donna Krista was already there, creating a series of grammatical exercises on the terminal between the beds. They waited until she found a stopping place before addressing her. The Sefero introduced him as Speaker Andrew, but he seems to find it hard to call me Dom Cristao. So does the bishop, said his wife. My true name is Deteste o pecado y faze o direito. Hate sin and do the right, Ender translated. My husband's name lends itself to a lovely shortening, Aime, love ye. But mine, can you imagine shouting to a friend, Oi, deteste? They all laughed. Love and loathing, that's who we are, husband and wife. What will you call me if the name Christian is too good for me? Ender looked at her face, beginning to wrinkle enough that someone more critical than he might call her old. Still there was laughter in her smile and a vigor in her eyes that made her seem much younger, even younger than Ender. I would call you Belisa, but your husband would accuse me of flirting with you. No, he would call me Belladonna, from beauty to poison, in one nasty little joke, wouldn't you, Don Cristal? It's my job to keep you humble, just as it's my job to keep you chaste, she answered. At that, Ender couldn't help looking from one bed to the other. Ah, another one who's curious about our celibate marriage, said the Pharaoh. So it's just that. It's just this elaborate kind of adopted planetary Catholicism among alien species, separated in the anthropology of kind of studying, not even the anthropology, the biology, and I guess anthropology of studying these alien creatures that are sentient and can talk. Being like all of that and isolation because this place is quarantined because of this species. Being invaded by this religious presence that just so happens to be the legendary destroyer of alien species, Ender Wiggins, unbeknownst to anybody. And so here's the thing. So Ender's Game was like 320 pages. This is like 400 pages. This book feels twice as long as Ender's Game. Worth every page. It's so much slower, such a heavier read, but it's such a more mature telling of kind of damaged humanity. Ender is still very damaged, but the way he is found to kind of involve, like his own healing has become this spiritual journey, and the spiritual journey is important. And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I read Ender's Game and left this kid at the end of Ender's Game and picked up Speaker for the Dead and ran into this 30-year-old man who's kind of found a peace within himself and is kind of jumping from place to place to kind of spread this idea of spirituality and truth to other people. And went I did not expect a character to do that. I didn't at all. And Orson Scott Card is, he's masterful in the character development. The Speaker for the Dead in Speaker for the Dead is as believable as Ender in Ender's Game. And the thing about it is, it's believable that they're the same person, separated by 20 years of relativistic life and 200 years of reality. Those things are believable. The beauty of it is, if the thing about Ender's Game is what you did was you read it and went, oh my god, that poor kid, then you can read Speaker of the Dead and go, oh man, he really turned all those abilities. They really became the strengths that they always were, but as part of his personality. And what he found was a place and a confidence to become powerful in a different way. And it's amazing somebody did that with 2 books. It's amazing. Because that's the thing, is that if what you do is you write Foundation, then the next book is going to be Foundation 2, right? And the book after that is going to be Foundation 3, and the book after that is going to be Foundation 4. And what you're going to expect is kind of continuity of places and things like that. And Orson Scott Card did none of that. He wrote Ender's Game, and then he wrote Speaker for the Dead, and they are not they are one is a sequel of the other, but you do not. They have almost the only commonality that they have are 3 characters that are shared. That's it. Ender has a brother and a sister, and they're shared. Aside from that, they don't even read like they were written by the same guy. That's how amazingly different these 2 books are. Both good. For my taste, Speaker of the Dead is way better than Ender's Game. I liked it way more than Ender's Game because it was more thought provoking. Ender's Game is like almost gut wrenching in its emotionalism, whereas Speaker for the Dead is just like a good mystery because they don't tell you why this guy died forever. Like till the very, I mean, you really are in suspense forever. And then there's that, and then also it's just the thought provoking, and kind of just the ideas that like it just lends itself to kind of give you a great study of kind of spirituality and human nature to really think about and digest. And for that, I mean, dude, Hugo Award. This has got a Hugo and a Nebula. It should have gotten a double Hugo and a double Nebula, but it doesn't exist that way. But yeah, so this is a good book. Like even if you listen to my review of Ender's Game and went, maybe not for me. If you think you need to read it to get to Speaker of the Dead, read it so you could read Speaker for the Dead. Speaker for the Dead is really good. It's really good. Not every book is, but this one is. This one is very good. I really loved it. I couldn't have been more surprised by Ender's Game sequel. It's such a good book, and it's a standalone book by itself. And you don't really need to know what goes on in Ender's Game to read this book and enjoy it. But you might as well, because Ender's Game is not a bad read. But yeah, so that's my review of Speaker for the Dead. I mean, it's amazing. It's great. It won the Hugo Award in 1987. This is probably not as readily available as Ender's Game, but it is available wherever giant piles of science fiction books exist. There's probably a copy of this. Or you could buy a box set like I did and just get all 4 of them in one nice little box. So yeah, do that. Amazon offers that because that's where I got mine. I get everything off Amazon. None of these book reviews are endorsed by Amazon, by the way. None of them are sponsored. So yes, read Speaker for the Dead, Orson Scott Card, 1987. Good book. Bye, everybody.